Hello and welcome to Making the Link, Diabetes, Food, and You. My name is Ashley Johnston and I'm a Master of Public Health student at the University of North Florida. I hope that you find this presentation useful and that you share the information you learn so we can help prevent and manage diabetes in a healthy way. So just a quick outline of what we'll be discussing today. I'm going to give an overview of diabetes, what diabetes is and what the symptoms are and that sort of thing. Then we'll talk about specific diabetes superfoods which are good for managing and preventing diabetes. Then we'll play the sugar game, which is a guessing game where we will estimate how many grams of sugar are in each food or beverage item. And then I have two recipes I wanted to share with you that are not only diabetes friendly, but again, great for diabetes prevention and management. And now if you'll just draw your attention over here to the right, there's a map of the United States, and this data is from 2010 from the US Census. And what this is, it details the percentage of people living with diabetes. And as you can see, it's color-coded here at the bottom. So our greatest concern is going to be the states with this reddish, dark reddish color here. And just to put that in perspective, when you're looking at the total United States, that accounts for 23.6 million Americans who are living with diabetes. Diabetes is a condition in which the body does not properly process food for use as energy. It occurs when the body doesn't make enough insulin or it can't use its own insulin as well as it should, and it can cause serious complications such as blindness, kidney failure, and even lower extremity amputation. And diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. So it's not something that should be taken lightly. And of course, these complications I mentioned are very extreme, but they do happen. Either somebody knows they have diabetes and they're not managing it properly before one of these things happens, or they don't know they have diabetes because they don't know the symptoms, and then they end up experiencing one of these adverse outcomes. So that brings us to the symptoms of diabetes over here on the right, and they're represented in a little cartoon grid here. So these are the most common symptoms, and they include frequent urination, constant hunger, vaginal infections, or any other type of infection. If you're seeing an increase of infections, then it's definitely a red flag. And then sudden weight loss, sexual problems, numb or tingling hands or feet, and wounds that either won't heal or heal very slowly, and then blurry vision or any change in vision, and then constant thirst, and then also feeling tired most of the time or very dry skin. And those two are kind of common side effects that could be related to a number of factors that may not be diabetes. But if you're, for instance, tired all the time and you have very dry skin and you have numb or tingling hands or feet, or you're always thirsty, you can kind of see a pattern there, and you definitely want to get that checked out with your doctor just to make sure. So there are two types of diabetes, and first we're going to discuss type 1 over here on the right. And it was previously referred to as juvenile onset diabetes, and it may account for 5 to 10% of all diagnosed cases. The risk factors are less well defined for this type of diabetes as opposed to type 2 diabetes. And there are several factors known to be associated with type 1 diabetes, which are autoimmune disorders, genetics, and the environment. So when you talk about type 1 diabetes, it's something that you more closely relate to genetics. And typically the person knows pretty early in life they have type 1 diabetes, and it's something they're going to manage throughout their life, where they'll have insulin and they'll take it with them and that kind of thing. As for type 2 diabetes, that's something that's more closely related to lifestyle factors. So we're going to focus on that more closely for this presentation because type 2 is more preventable, it's related to lifestyle factors, and it's something that we all should be involved in. So it was previously called adult onset diabetes, and the reason that it's not currently called that anymore is because we're seeing type 2 diabetes in children at a younger age more and more and more every year, and this goes right along with the obesity epidemic we're facing in America. Type 2 diabetes accounts for about 90 to 95% of all diagnosed cases, and there are risk factors that have been identified, such as family or gestational history. So that's to say, if your mother has diabetes or other people in your family has a history of diabetes, or you yourself, when pregnant, have had gestational diabetes, which means diabetes while pregnant, then you're more likely to develop diabetes type 2. And then also another risk factor is old age, obesity. Type 2 diabetes and obesity kind of go hand in hand. And then impaired glucose tolerance, which is something you would find out through your physician. And then physical inactivity and race and ethnicity. So now we're going to talk about prevention and treatment. So for prevention, according to the CDC, a number of studies show that regular physical activity can significantly reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, which, as I said, is also associated with obesity. And for treatment, these first two can be rolled right into prevention. So diet control, again with the exercise, and then blood glucose monitoring. I consider that also to be part of prevention because many people are pre-diabetic and they don't even know it. So if you're monitoring your blood glucose, like let's say you get your blood work done when you go to your annual physical, you'll be able to detect the problem before the problem is, full-blown diabetes. So it's a good idea when you do go to your primary care physician, go ahead and get that blood work done once a year so you can pull all that data, make sure everything's going well for you. So other two parts of treatment for type 2 diabetes and then even diabetes type 1, oral medication and or insulin injections. Okay, on to the food portion of the presentation. Try to limit refined white breads and pastas, processed and fast foods, as well as fried foods. And to me, that's very common sense. We're not just talking about people with diabetes or people at risk for diabetes, because in truth, as Americans, we're all at risk for diabetes. So most of your grains should be whole grain. Most of your breads and pastas, those should be whole wheat or whole grain, and you should try to limit fast foods and fried foods as much as possible. So as far as the specific foods that are found to be good for diabetes prevention and management, the list here for you is beans, dairy, salmon, tuna, barley, oats, berries, avocado, greens, lentils, flaxseed, walnuts, almonds, and then peanut butter and dark chocolate. So to get the full effects of these foods, you want to try to eat as many in combination as you can. So I want to mention those last two foods have a little star by them, and that's because those are like the runner-up foods. Those are foods you want to incorporate in moderation. So perhaps peanut butter and dark chocolate could be combined, and that could be a good dessert. Or for your other combinations, you could do like a nice grilled salmon over top of some greens, so you'd have a salmon salad, things like that. Very easy to do. And if you wanted to get some more ideas about these foods and some recipes, you can visit this link here at the bottom. And if you want to go ahead and pause the video and type that into your browser, most definitely feel free. The sugar game. Now we're going to play a guessing game about how many grams of sugar are in each item. So we're going to have either a food or drink item up on the screen, and then you'll guess how many grams of sugar are in that item. And I think this is a good game to play because it gives you not only a realization of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's how many grams of sugar are in A, B, and C, but also that this is what it looks like with the sugar cube representation. So just to keep in mind, one sugar cube, which is pictured down here, is 4 grams of sugar, which in turn is 1 teaspoon, and that represents 16 calories. So if you think about this in terms of teaspoons, you would just scoop the teaspoons out and put them in a cup, and that's how much sugar is in each item. So let's go ahead and get started. How much sugar do you think is in 1 can of Coca-Cola? Is it A, 39 grams, B, 29 grams, C, 19 grams, or D, 49 grams? And keep in mind, 1 cube is equal to 4 grams, which is 1 teaspoon, which is 16 calories. But the bottom line is, how many grams of sugar do you think is in 1 can of Coca-Cola? If you guessed A, 39 grams of sugar, you are right on the money. And we can count those cubes together. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.5. So that's 9.5 cubes or 39 grams of sugar. Next on the agenda, how much sugar is in 3 reduced fat Oreos? A, 21 grams, B, 10 grams, C, 31 grams, or D, 14 grams? What do you think? If you said D, 14 grams, you are correct, which is about 3.5 cubes of sugar. Now just think about that for a second. If you wanted to have a dessert, would you rather have 3 of these cookies or 1 can of Coca-Cola? Because that can has so much more sugar, so you just have to think about the balance here. Okay, up next we have 8 baby carrots. How much sugar do you think is in 8 baby carrots? Is it A, 11 grams, B, 18 grams, C, 22 grams, or D, 4 grams? If you guess D, 4 grams, you are correct, and that's 1 cube. And this threw me off just a little bit because I know dietitians sometimes and nutritionists sometimes say that carrots are one of the more sweet vegetables. It's a starchy sweet vegetable. But if you compare it to the other items that we've seen so far, we just have 1 cube here. So never think that a sugary fruit or vegetable is a bad choice, and never think that cookies or a can of Coke is a bad choice. It's all about moderation here. And you want to try to get plenty of fruits and vegetables in your diet, and then for the things like the cookies and the Coke, you want to do those in moderation. So let's carry on. All right, how much sugar do you think is in 4 ounces of turkey breast? Is it A, 5 grams, B, 0 grams, C, 8 grams, or D, 1 gram? What do you think? I bet you got it. It's B, 0 grams. There's no sugar in this 4 ounces of turkey breast. Now, one caveat to that would be if you went to the grocery store and you were either in the deli or the refrigerated section and you saw either ham or turkey, sliced and it said honey roasted or honey maple or something like that, it may indeed have added sugar. So that's something you would definitely want to flip that over just to see, just so that you're in the know and you have an idea of what this food has in it. Now we have a large apple. How many grams of sugar is in this large apple? Is it A, 15 grams, B, 0 grams, C, 23 grams, or D, 6 grams? And the answer is C, 23 grams, which is about 6 cubes of sugar. So of course, fruits generally have more sugars than vegetables. So if you have diabetes, that's something you want to balance out. If you don't have diabetes, it's still something to be mindful of. And you also want to think that not all sugars are created equal. So we have our 3 cookies that we looked at before, and we have our large apple. Our large apple has more sugar than our 3 cookies, but the difference is the large apple is naturally occurring fruit sugar, and the cookies are either, white sugar, table sugar, sucrose, or corn syrup, or high fructose corn syrup, or a combination. So they're not all created equal. Again, you want to squeeze in your fruits and veggies, and you want to have a nice balance. Now we're going to talk about recipes. The American Diabetes Association, or ADA, recommends that people with diabetes eat a diet of balanced carbohydrates, proteins, and unsaturated fats. And foods containing carbohydrates from whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and low-fat milk should be included in a healthy diabetic diet. The ADA also recommends including fish in your diet 2 to 3 times per week and watching portion sizes. And they have a tip that because of the risk factor of diabetes for heart disease, it's also wise to reduce sodium and fat intake. So this talks about recommendations for people with diabetes, but looking from a prevention standpoint, All of these things are great for everybody to adopt. Again, you want to look for that balance of the carbohydrates, proteins, and then you want to include your whole grain carbohydrates, fruits, veggies, low-fat dairy, and then fish 2 to 3 times a week, and watch your portion sizes. So there comes the moderation again. And then heart disease is the #1 killer of Americans. So we all want to watch our added sodium and fat intake as well. This recipe is called Creamy Italian Pasta Salad, and it comes from Prevention Magazine. Here's a website down here if you want to look that up. I have the instructions on the next couple slides, so just stay tuned. We just want to go over the nutrition facts really quickly before we move on too far. So this is per serving. We have about 283 calories, 3.1 grams of fat, 1 gram of saturated fat, 232 milligrams of sodium, 45 carbs, about 4 sugars, almost 6 grams of fiber, and 21.5 grams of protein. And this recipe serves 4 people. So our ingredients are 2 cups of whole grain rotini, or whatever your favorite pasta is. If you like elbow noodles, go for it. If you want fettuccine, great. As long as it's whole grain, you're good to go. Next is half a cup of fat-free Greek yogurt, 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. I think probably the best idea is to get this either from the deli or in the dairy section of the grocery store, because it's going to be more fresh and probably have less preservatives and sodium in it, as opposed to the kind that's on the pasta aisle with the processed foods. Then we have 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped basil. This is something that you may not have on hand, and that's okay. If you have dry basil, you just want to use it to taste. You don't want to add 2 tablespoons of dried basil because it's going to be a little bit more pungent. So just do a couple sprinkles here and there and see how you like that. And if you need more, you can add more, and if not, then you're good to go. Then 1 tablespoon of red wine vinegar, half a tablespoon of dried mustard. Again, if you don't have dried mustard, you could just use the mustard you have in your refrigerator, but you're probably just going to want to add just a little bit. And then 1 clove of garlic minced, and you can either buy the garlic whole or you can buy it pre-minced in jars, which are in the produce section. Then 1 can or 6 ounces of solid white tuna packed in water, drained and flaked. And I just wanted to mention a substitution at this point. If you don't like tuna or salmon or anything like that in your salad, you could substitute that for chicken that's in the can, or you could get chicken breast and cook it yourself, as long as you don't add too much salt or oil, and you could use that instead. And then 4 cups of chopped romaine lettuce, or whatever your favorite lettuce is. I would say maybe avoid the iceberg lettuce because it's not super nutritional as much as your romaines or your green leaf, red leaf, spinach, those kinds of lettuces. And then 1 cup of cherry tomatoes, or even you can cube whatever tomato you have on hand. That would be great. So we have very easy directions for this dish, and this will make a perfect lunch. So you're going to prepare the pasta according to the package instructions, and then you're going to rinse that under cold water and drain. And meanwhile, you're going to stir together the yogurt, cheese, basil, vinegar, mustard, and garlic in a large bowl, and then add your tuna or chicken if you want to do that instead, and then your romaine, tomatoes, and pasta, and then you're going to toss it to coat it, and then chill if desired. You want to serve it nice and cold and serve. And just one tip here is if you're going to eat some of this and then save some for tomorrow, or you're going to split it up and have leftovers, just keep your lettuce separate until you're ready to serve, and that way it won't get wilty. Now, if we have our main dish, of course we have to have dessert, right? I'm sure you remember that chocolate and peanut butter from our diabetes superfoods. So we're going to combine those 2 ingredients for some wonderful chocolate peanut butter cupcakes. And just to go over the nutrition facts really quickly, for each cupcake there's 148 calories, about 7 grams of fat, 1 gram of saturated fat, about 196 milligrams of sodium, 18 carbs, a total of about 12 sugars, and about 1 gram of dietary fiber, and then 5.3 grams of protein, which is pretty good for protein when you're talking about desserts. Your ingredients include 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, half a cup of whole wheat pastry flour, half a cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar, 4 egg whites and 1 egg, 3 tablespoons of canola oil, 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, 1½ cups of plain low-fat yogurt, 3/4 cup of omega-3 enriched peanut butter, or if you don't have that in your cupboard or you can't find it, regular peanut butter is fine as long as it doesn't have a lot of added salt or sugar. So just check the back label, and then you need 3/4 cup of confectioner's sugar, 3 ounces of fat-free cream cheese, and a 1/4 cup of fat-free evaporated milk. Once you have all your ingredients together, you're going to coat your muffin tin with cooking spray, or you can line it with the cupcake papers, and then whisk together flours, cocoa, baking soda, baking powder, and salt in a medium bowl. And then in a large bowl, beat together granulated sugar, egg whites, and egg with an electric mixer on medium speed for about 5 minutes, or until that mixture is thick and a pale yellow. Then you'll beat in the oil and vanilla and alternately add the reserved flour mixture and yogurt and beat that on low until it's incorporated into the mixture. Then divide the batter into the muffin cups, filling just over half full, and bake that for 15 minutes or until you can stick a toothpick in the middle of one of the cupcakes and it comes out clean. And then you'll remove the cupcakes to a rack where they can cool. And meanwhile, you're going to go ahead and make that frosting. So you'll whisk together the peanut butter, confectioner's sugar, cream cheese, and milk until it's all well blended. And then you'll spread about a tablespoon over each cupcake, or you can pipe it if you want to make it fancy. And if you want to make this a little bit more simple, you could always put it in a 13x9 cake pan and just make a peanut butter chocolate cake instead of cupcakes. So it just depends on your personal preference. And I just wanted to thank you for joining me today. And if you would like further information about diabetes or anything we've discussed in this presentation, please visit the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention at cdc.gov/diabetes or the American Diabetes Association at diabetes.org. And again, my name is Ashley Johnston, MPH student at the University of North Florida. And if you have any questions for me, please feel free to email me at ashley.johnston@unf.edu. Thank you, and I hope you can share the information you've learned today to help prevent and manage diabetes.